So I had the chance to go visit this company this summer. And I think anytime I get a chance to go do a factory tour or meet with people in person, I love to do it. I love networking. You can only do so much on Zoom and LinkedIn and emails and text messages, right? So I went to go visit this company and I was really surprised. So first of all, this is about Donaldson, and they're a big company, over 11,000 employees. They're publicly traded, billions a year in revenue, all those things. And I think what I found really interesting, as soon as you walk into their lobby, they have, I believe it's the original tractor that started Donaldson. So this is a multi-billion-dollar company with thousands of employees, and it started with one person fixing a problem 107 years ago. And that problem was diesel engines in the farm fields didn't work. Too much dust. They plugged up, they dusted the engines, they had all kinds of problems. And the guy made a filter. And here our company is 107 years later, still innovating, still technology, still building things out. You would think after 100 years, they'd be out of ideas on how to improve the product line, but they have more ideas than they have time and resources for. So you got to appreciate the entrepreneur side of that inside a bigger organization. And I also want to make sure that comes across in this video is really how important it is to have high quality products on your vehicles. There's places to go save money, and there's places not to. And I think what Donaldson's really trying to do is actually put things out there technology-wise, because what they really found is people replace their filters too often. And they want to help get that message. So hopefully you enjoy the episode. You come away learning something about this. And I found it fascinating. Love factory tours, love the people at Donaldson. So again, thank you to Eric and Chris Purdy and Lori and everyone over there for putting this episode together. So without that, enjoy the episode. Welcome everyone to another episode of the DL. I am your host, Tyler Robertson, also the founder and CEO of Diesel Laptops. This is the show I get to talk about all kinds of things that I find interesting. And I actually had the privilege to go visit this company, meet with these people. We're doing some things with them. And I was like, man, you got to get on the podcast and talk about some of these things. Because I had a perception, because I only kind of knew one product they had, but they're obviously a lot bigger than that. So I'd like to introduce Eric Miller with Donaldson. So welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, thanks, Tyler. Glad to be here. Happy to join you on this podcast.
Well, I wore blue today because I know we're going to be talking to Donaldson. I know that's your company colors. I see the blue everywhere, right? So Donaldson, it's a small little tiny company in the middle of nowhere, right? Like that's you guys?
Yeah, about 100 years ago, I suppose. Yeah, it's certainly not the case now. Definitely a global company. You know, we're operating all over the world, doing a lot of exciting things across the world, really.
Yeah, and so it's I worked in dealerships forever, and I knew you guys as kind of the Donaldson filtration, right? And we had your filters there for commercial trucks, but I think Donaldson's a little bit bigger than just filtration for commercial trucks.
Yeah, certainly. The on-road market, over the highway trucks, that sort of thing is an important market for us. But when we look at the broad portion of Donaldson, we're a filtration company that touches, everything from disk drives and gas turbines to diesel engines. Diesel engines is really where we got our start with an air filter originally, 107 years ago, as I mentioned, the 100-year time frame. But it's expanded quite a bit from then. So while we do have air filters, it's hydraulic, it's fuel, it's lube, it's everything that touches a diesel engine, including emissions, even filtering the exhaust that comes out of the engine as well.
So before I visited you guys, I had no idea that there wasn't filters on diesel engines way back in the day. So that was really interesting to me. And, you guys actually have, I don't know if it's the original one or a replica of the one there, like in your lobby and everything, but it was really interesting to see that. And then as I left, I was like, it's actually kind of amazing. Like, I mean, filtration's a big world, right? We talked hydraulic, fuel, air, all these things, but air is where you guys got started. And that's still kind of like your bread and butter. Like, you guys are the OEM filter for all these commercial trucks when it comes to the air side of things. Is that just kind of ingrained in the company? And I think the air filtration goes beyond the other applications too, industrial and whatnot.
Yeah, air is really where it started. And as we built it up, that's been our most mature product line, of course. And it's a place where we still have a lot of success. Partnering with a lot of the OEMs, with our aftermarket partners, those sort of things. It's what people know Donaldson as. As we went through our history, we started to introduce other things years later, and with any business, as those products mature, they start to come up. But we never lost sight of that air filtration piece that really made us who we are today.
So one of the things, and again, I'm going back to my dealership days. I'm working at a dealership, and there's a lot of brands a dealership can choose to carry, and a lot of different brands customers can choose to buy. And I never understood, like, okay, I got this filter, it's $50, but I can go on Alibaba or I can go somewhere else and buy this other one for $10. They both say they are filters. How would you explain to people what's the difference, right? Because they look the same when you look at them, right? Because they're just a canister essentially. Like what really is the difference when it comes to filtration?
Well, it really comes down to performance and quality. We can get a lot of things that look alike. The outside of this housing here, it's just a can. It's what's happening on the inside that really makes a difference. And for Donaldson, we are an innovation company, technology driven. We have more engineers and scientists than I can usually count, thousands of them, in fact. And we're doing things all the way down to the fibers in the media as we design these things to really cure some of the problems that the equipment are having. You think back 100 years ago, and some moss in a can was able to filter out some of the dust in a field. But nowadays, with the tolerances, high pressure injection, turbos that are spinning even faster, all the things that these modern engines have, they need a lot more protection.
Yeah.
When you compare a cheap and cheerful filter to a quality brand, to something like Donaldson with a lot of technology in there, it isn't a lot of times what you can see, because what we're doing is at very fine levels, and the materials we use and the science we put behind it is quite different.
Yeah, I just got to imagine like micron ratings, right? I mean, I know like microns are small things, obviously, but I mean, I was surprised, like when I was there, you guys brought me into one of your testing centers, and literally you guys had different types of dust, and you guys were testing, I believe, the quality control. Can you kind of explain like why you guys do that? Like why are you guys trying to break things, trying to find things? What are you trying to do when you're trying to torture test your own products essentially?
Yeah, there are certainly cases where we are trying to break it. We've got a lab that shakes and heats and cools things until they break. But our labs that work on the actual filtration properties really are trying to solve real world problems. And that's really where we've taken some of our lab capabilities more recently too, in terms of understanding how a piece of equipment really operates in the field. We think of airflow through an engine. It isn't always static. It doesn't run at the same exact air intake flow all the time. Same for hydraulics and fuel and lube. And the contaminant that challenges are different. A combine running in a field at harvest time sees way different contaminants going into it than an on-road truck would, with maybe fine dust and soot, but a generally low concentration of it. So what our labs are trying to do is really simulate those real-world conditions to predict how these will operate in the field and protect the equipment that people are paying for the filter to protect.
So, when it comes to fuel and oil and hydraulic filters, they're usually round canister type looking things. Air filters seem they can be any form factor at all. And I've always wondered, like, how does that happen? Is it the manufacturer just saying, hey, we're building a new thing and we need to have a filtration? They kind of give some specs, and you guys have areas you got to figure out how you're going to make it work, or what's the process goes through? Because as I said earlier, you guys are the OEM air filter for a lot of the truck manufacturers, if not all of them. So what's that look like when someone comes to you, Mr. Manufacturer, and says, hey, we're building a new truck and we need an air filter? Can you walk us through the process?
Yeah, and to be honest, that probably changed a fair amount 20 or so years ago. If you look back a long time, even our air cleaners at the beginning were generally round canister kind of shapes with inlets on the sides or the ends. But as we went into these new emission standards and fuel economy standards and things like that, our air cleaners had to go under hood for fuel economy, especially for on-road trucks where air drag is a real issue. And as we did that, we kept getting pushed into smaller and smaller spaces, right? So the OEM would certainly give us some specifications. They have a expected life that they have for a service interval. They have a certain level of protection that they expect in an environment it runs in. They'll give us that data. And then they'll give us a space claim. If it's under hood, they might give us some really strange little shape and tell us you have to fit in here somehow, some way. And when you think of things like PowerCore, that's really where this came from. It was an invention out of necessity. We had to find a different way to fit into a smaller space and provide more benefit for it. And actually, I think I have one here. this little filter here that's on the table does the same as this. So you can see quite the difference between these two. And that was one of those design necessities, is to be able to take something this small and make it operate like that big white filter I had.
So wait, put that up again, because I got a question here now, right? So I'm going to explain for the audio too. So if you've ever seen that, like an air canister, right, on the outside of a truck, the big filters that drop in, probably 2 feet tall, about a foot radius. And then he's got one that's literally, I don't know, a quarter of the size high, but a little bit bigger, right?
8 inches tall, 12 inches round.
Yeah. So are you saying that smaller one actually can do the same thing that big one can do? And is that the technology difference that's happened here?
Exactly. It's same airflow, same dust holding capacity, which predicts the life of your filter. And actually, this one will actually capture more small dust, fine dust, because of our ultra-web technology on there. So it actually does more than the big one.
All right. And that's due to like the shape, or that's due to like the technology and the material inside that filter?
Yeah, a little of both. So we've got some proprietary technology in the actual sheets of media, the paper, if you will, of the media, and then how we form it. So this one, when you look at it, it looks like a bunch of flutes. If you think of corrugated cardboard, the end profile of that's wrapped around there. We've got some intellectual property we put in there some time ago. We keep updating as we advance it. So this is one of our newer generations of that technology that, as we learn the science of separation, we can do a lot more with a lot less. All
right. So you guys are a multi-billion-dollar company. You got 11,000 plus employees. You're multinational, and you've been doing filters for 100 years. And you're telling me you guys are still learning new things about filtration through this process today.
Every day. We our goal is every year to spend 3 to 4% on R&D. We've got an entire corporate technology group that actually sits pretty close to my team as well. And a week doesn't go by where they've got some new idea that we're testing to really change what the future filtration looks like.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, right? I mean, that's what you want, is companies keep innovating and keep doing these things. So anytime we talk about innovation and filtration and these things that are happening, what comes to my head right away is EVs, right? So I'm diesel laptops. Yeah. People ask me all the time, well, Tyler, what are you going to do when EVs are all over the place? And we got our response, but you're obviously making filters that go on engines primarily, right? So we don't need an air filter anymore, a fuel filter. We don't need an oil filter. How is Donaldson handling that? Because you're a publicly traded company. I'm sure those questions get asked. People might be looking at that being like, I don't know, guys. So what's the response? How does Donaldson view that?
Yeah, it's certainly a common question, whether we're talking to investors, employees, customers. It's one that comes up frequently. And it's something we watch. Actually, that same corporate technology group that I mentioned has a data science team, and they're modeling that for us in terms of how that impacts us as we look at what happens to the diesel engine. And we have some of our own forecasts in terms of, the first step might be hybridization, and then you've got other alternative power sources such as EVs with batteries. But one of the things we're really looking at for that is, especially for heavy duty, where we specialize, where our core markets are, is hydrogen fuel cell. That batteries will fit a certain number of our applications, certainly, especially things that you can plug in at night and let them recharge before you come back the next day. But for those long haul trucks, or the things that don't have a home base or need to run 20 out of 24 hours a day, that doesn't necessarily have the same benefit. So when we look at hydrogen fuel cell, it fits Donaldson actually. On a hydrogen fuel cell, we'll actually have 3 of our different businesses all providing filtration for those fuel cells. Whether it's the intake it needs to stop some of the dust and the chemicals that would poison essentially a fuel cell, or the membranes and the venting and other things that actually need to happen there as well. So we're prepared for it. It won't change the outlook of what we sell, but we're there for the equipment long haul.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. Very similar story here, right? Because people keep talking like, again, hey, you're diesel, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, when all these fuel stations turn into charging stations, those are all computer controlled things that will need diagnostics and repair. So I really actually kind of excited about the EV thing, and there's opportunity for us there with a lot of other things. And what's interesting too about the hydrogen thing is, mainstream media, they kind of hype up this whole EV commercial truck thing. And I'm just telling everyone listening to this, truck batteries have a long way to go, and trucks are like 10,000 pounds heavier with them. So there's some technology things that got to get solved there before those really take over. But a lot of people in the industry, like myself, are like, man, hydrogen actually seems like the better solution that I think everyone's kind of waiting for. And obviously see people make a lot of investments. So it's really interesting to see Donaldson saying, hey, we're looking forward to hydrogen, because there's a whole nother product line, and this could be a great thing for us and a huge expansion for our company. So as time goes on, and I think the other one that really comes to mind as well has to be off-highway. So off-highway filtration has to be a little bit different than on-highway. Bigger mining operations, bigger vehicles. What are some of the differences in that application that you see?
Well, certainly size, right? You can think of a 40-ton haul truck needs a way different filtration package than Class 6 truck, right? But it's really around the environment, what we do with the contaminant that's coming at it. When we look at air cleaners, our core of where we started the business, there we're going to have a lot of two-stage filtration. So we're going to do a lot of like inertial separation. You can think of your Dyson vacuums or other things where you spin the air coming in hard so that the heavy particles expand out. And in some of those cases, we're separating 95% of the dust before it ever even gets to the air cleaner. Because if we didn't, those trucks, those tractors, whatever it may be, would be constantly maintaining their air filters. Certainly in the off-road then too, we see a lot of hydraulics, right? Fluid power is a major portion of how those machines do work.
Well, one of the things that I know I learned when I was with you was, hey, people aren't changing their filters when they should. And I thought you were going to go down the path of they're not changing them often enough, but you guys actually went down the path of they're probably changing them too early in a lot of situations. And I know we have FilterMinder and FilterMinder Connect, and I got to assume like on an excavator or one of those huge mine hauling trucks that it's not just $100 air filter when they go swap out air filters. These things are a little bit more expensive due to the complexity and the size and all these things. So can we talk a little bit about FilterMinder Connect? Can you explain that to everybody?
Yeah, so FilterMinder Connect is our IoT initiative for diesel engines and understanding filtrations. And one of the things we like to say is imagine if your filters could talk to you, if they could tell you how much life they have left, how they're operating, what the condition of your oil is that they're filtering, things of that nature to really help you optimize your maintenance schedules. You mentioned, am I changing my filter on time? Am I too late or am I too early? And really what we've discovered is many times you're servicing it too often. You haven't used up the full life of your filter when you have come up to a service interval. Now, there is certainly a balance between bringing in a piece of equipment for service every time something happens versus getting a lot of things done when you do take it out of service. But with this intelligence, we can help you get there to make sure that you get the full value out of your filter. You're choosing the filters that can actually get you there, premium brands with premium technology and performance and things that can really help you lower your maintenance costs and total cost of ownership. So FilterMinder Connect works in the same way as a lot of telematics things. We plug in that to actually your existing telematics. That's one of the foundational desires for us, is not to add more complexity to your fleet and your equipment. That if you've got a telematics provider, that we can help you find a way to plug into it, see it on their existing dashboards and websites, and really enable folks to have more intelligence about some of the things that they maintain the most on their equipment, their filters and their fluids.
All right. So FilterMinder Connect, it's part hardware, part software, because what you're talking about is being able to measure things you can't measure on a truck, because there's no sensors measuring oil quality or viscosity, or I'm not even sure what you guys are measuring on these things, right? But so how does it work? Like if somebody wants to monitor, and I got to assume this is because there's hardware costs, it's probably more off highway than on highway due to the cost of these things. But what does that look like? I have to buy a package and I have to install it myself and punch some new holes in some things. What's it look like?
Yeah, a little easier than that. In fact, actually, we are the on-road trucks are the place that you're going to find our products most available and ready right now. So it's easier because we use wireless sensing technology. So on an air cleaner, there's usually a sensor today. It's usually mechanical and visual. So you have to pop the hood and kind of look at where it's at. It's generally that way. Sometimes we have a couple electronics that'll turn on a light on a dash or something like that. But with this one, using wireless technology, we're not asking you to pop holes to your firewall and run a bunch of extra wires and that sort of thing. But we have kits to allow for air filtration, measuring the restriction, how much pressure drop is across that filter. Looking at fuel and lube. On the lube side, it's oil conditioning. So we're looking at things like you mentioned, viscosity. Is there soot in the oil? Is there coolant or fuel dilution? Some of those things that would predict that your oil is degrading faster than it should. And really, that's where the value of this comes in. We've saved engines already. by being able to tell you that you have a problem before you've taken out an engine. Maybe you have an EGR leak, something like that, and it's a couple $1,000 fix. That's a whole lot better than an engine at $40,000.
Yeah. So how long does it take someone to install one of those kits on a commercial truck? Is this like a full day adventure, or is it relatively straightforward?
I wouldn't consider it a full day. You're going to probably need a couple hours here to plumb it in. You're going to use generally existing ports and things for, if you're just looking for the air filter, you're probably looking at less than an hour. It's screw one thing off, screw one in, plug in your devices to like a Geotab Go kind of device, and a wireless sensor works with that. As you plumb into things like fuel and lube, anytime you open up a system like that, there's probably a little work, but certainly less than a day.
Yeah. So do I get an app? Do I get an email? Or do you guys monitor for the user? What's it look like once it's installed? Who's watching this thing, and how does it work?
Yeah, so part of that design is for like the Geotab Go example I had. We'd be hooking right into those. So we'd provide you with a dashboard of some of the analytics. Certainly the data coming off of those sensors means almost nothing to anybody that isn't deep in filtration. So our data sciences team are helping with taking sensor data and turning it into intelligence, action-driven insights for the customers. But the idea there is you access that dashboard in your existing telematics systems.
Yeah. So have you guys gone down is it just a reactionary thing now? Or are you guys heading down the predictive path to be like, oh, hey, next week or so many hours, you're going to have to change your filters? Where are you guys currently at?
Yeah, predictive is absolutely where we're going to be. And you think of where engines started, we talked about at the onset of diesel engines, there wasn't filtration. Well, as that came on, OEMs and folks like Donaldson, we had to start predicting how long will your oil last, how long will the air filter, but it's really rudimentary, right? It's, all right, I know I can get 500 hours on this off-road equipment or 50,000 miles on this truck. We predict it, but it's always to the lowest common denominator, right? Severe duty, even if you're running kind of a light duty route or something like that, you're probably still servicing it on something that maybe a cement truck or vocational truck still might be experiencing. With our predictive, it's going to learn from your behavior, from where your fleet operates, and help you optimize to what you experience.
Yeah, predictive's like this whole new frontier, right? And I saw this study years ago, and this guy made this chart on just kind of the evolution of diagnostics, and he was absolutely right. Like predictive's where things are going. And I was just talking to another company. They do predictive, but over kind of like the whole truck on existing sensors and whatnot. And I found it interesting because I'm like, well, what's their process look like when we're getting a new customer involved? And he goes, oh, well, we use their geotabs or devices, we use our software, our algorithms. And he goes, and then we send them insights. He goes, but the funny thing is on demos and trials, our customers don't actually do anything with the insights. They wait for it to actually break to see if the insight was correct. so they're doing it a different way. So hopefully people aren't blowing up engines, and proving out things that way. But I found it hilarious that customers are willing to break things just to prove that something works and can be predictive. It kind of took me back there for a minute. And I know you have over there, again, on screen for people in the video, you have a blue filter. You have a different product line. And I guess I didn't understand this about Donaldson either, is you have like essentially a premium line that's Donaldson. So if you could explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So right now we probably have probably just shy of 200 products that we have under our blue trademark kind of brand. Typically if it's a liquid part, it's going to have a blue painted housing. If it's an air part, it's going to have blue media that you can see. But that premium brand is really about giving back to the end user in a way that helps them optimize protection or longevity of the filter. So for example, on our Donaldson Blue Lube line, and we think of that oil condition sensor we just talked about, if you're working with your oil vendor and your filtration vendor, you may be able to extend your intervals. You perhaps have to pay a little bit more for a premium filter and synthetic lube and that sort of thing. But if we can have that truck in half as often to have its oil drained and the cost associated with that, we can really bring some TCO to them. So through that blue line, we've released a series of air, fuel, lube filters to really help people optimize the protection and the life of service intervals.
So what surprised me over the last couple of years, and I mean, I remember being working as a service writer 20 years ago, and it seemed like the oil change intervals were really short. Like it wasn't that long you could go between changing. And then I was reading through some of our information we have in our system about maintenance intervals because the customer was asking. I'm like, man, is this right? Can you really go this many miles before changing a filter, your oil filter and your oil? So what's changed? Is it the filtration? Is it the oil? I mean, I know there's more emission stuff going on now inside the engine as well, and things are running hotter. It just shocked me. Like, what's changed there technology-wise?
Well, it's a little of both, and I think when you look at the OEMs, they have to drive that way, right? They're competing on total cost of ownership, and every time that truck comes out of service and has a cost associated with maintenance, it hurts them on that total cost of ownership that these fleets are really paying close attention to. But when it comes down to like the fluids like that, it was through a lot of partnerships, right? Where a lube filter alone may be able to get you a portion of the way. But if that oil is degrading because of acid and base and the levels changing in the chemistry of it, you're not going to get far enough. So when you look at those oil vendors, they're doing the same thing with their synthetic lubes, the additive packages they're putting in. And for some of ours, even like our coolant filters, we'll put additives back in that filter to help you extend those chemical properties as well.
One of the interesting things I always find out with like brand names and manufacturers is oftentimes there's knockoffs, right? I mean, I was in New York City not long ago, and I was all excited to buy some knockoff Rolex watches, on the street. Does that happen with you guys? I've talked to a couple of manufacturers where people are like faking that they're Donaldson and those get into the market and cause that problem. Have you guys run across that, and how do you deal with it? What happens there?
Yeah, I think any major company is going to have some level of knockoff and counterfeit kind of work. We see perhaps more globally than we do domestically, but nobody's immune to it either. So of course our legal team is engaged, and we engage those counterfeiters and cease and desist and all the stuff that they'd work on. But part of it is also just making sure that we have, proper intellectual property and brand standards and other things to help people identify that they are getting something of high quality. Thinking of the purses, the watches, the other stuff that are counterfeit. Usually you can go pick out something that's different and it's not real. But to be honest, where we see it hit us perhaps the most is less maybe counterfeit in terms of brand counterfeit, but rather people trying to emulate our technology that they really don't know the science behind it. And I think that's what's dangerous for the customers is it looks like it might fit. It looks similar, like it might operate, but when we test them, man, they could be pretty disastrous for the piece of equipment that they go on.
I think it was Lori that said this when I was touring your place, and she just made the comment like, look, this is like an insurance policy against your engine. And this is really the place where you want to go save money, right? To blow up your $40,000 engine. Which I was like, you know what? That's actually a really good comment. It's probably not the place I want to go save and try to find some inferior product to save a couple nickels. It's just not worth it. And I can tell the audience after spending time there and learning more with you guys over the last, year or so here, there is a lot of effort and a lot of engineering and a lot of care to quality that goes through. And a company doesn't make it 107 years putting out a poor product, right? I mean, customers at the end of the day want to buy good products that protect them. They want to buy a solution, not a product. And it really seems Donaldson's been focused on doing that for over 100 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I look at with that is just the necessity of filtration. In a perfect world, you don't need filters. Your air is pure, your fuel and lube, but that's not the case. And you need that insurance policy, right? You've invested a lot in a piece of equipment. You want to make sure that piece of equipment operates to its fullest extent.
Well, Eric, if people are listening, they want to learn more about Donaldson. I know you guys offer, more than just filters over there. The training, the support, all the things that come along with it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also want to just say this for all, like I see this on Facebook groups all the time for people that are over tightening their filters. Please look at the label. Just look at the filter before you put it on. They literally have them printed on there how tight to put those things. So please, you will save the stress of diesel technicians everywhere if you actually read what you're putting on the vehicle.
Yeah, for those on the video, of course, we've got a little series of arrows on the top and a portion of our pictogram that tells you, is it to touching in 3/4 turn or a full turn? We'll tell you how to do it and save yourself some of the stress. So. But to your question, if people are looking for more information, certainly our website is a great spot to go. Lots of resources, including more information on the FilterMinder Connect. Right on the main page, it'll link you there to things even like our trials and things that we're offering on that product line.
Connected things, right? That's the way the world's going. Technology, data, all those pieces to make better decisions. And It's pretty cool to see a filter company be really a software company. We're all technology companies at the end of the day. People just oftentimes don't realize it. So, Eric, thank you very much for coming on the show, talking to us about Donaldson, all the things you have going on over there. For everyone watching, listening, I really want to say again, appreciate it. Like, comment, share, subscribe. We appreciate all that. It does help us get the word out there. And we'll catch you on the next one. It's not just diagnostics, it's diagnostics done right. And if you have great filters, you may not have to do as much diagnostics. Thank you for watching and listening.